quiet on set. Everybody places. Yeah, like they're right here. Like, what are you doing? What's good, everybody? How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Basic Production Skills class here at Denver Community Media. A couple announcements before we start. We have podcast open hours. They're coming up. Podcast open hours. You can reserve your spot to record your podcast for free. It's on the first Friday and Saturday of every month. And we also have First Friday films on the first Friday of every month. They happen. You can submit your film. You can submit your film and we can all watch it together. Other filmmakers submit their films as well. We watch those as well. So, yeah, sign up for that. Send in your stuff. But that's all we really got for announcements. But we can kind of just jump right into the production skills. So, table of contents. We're gonna focus on three things today. First thing is photography and composition. We're going to talk about photography and composition just because, like, photos and videos, I know I mostly talk about video, but they're very similar. They all go hand in hand. Your composition is going to help. Better composition in your photos is actually going to help with better composition in your videos as well. So it's a skill that goes hand in hand. So they always work together. So we'll do core photography, fundamentals, composition rules and techniques. Those rules and techniques and the core fundamentals in photography are going to help in your video production just in general. The second thing will be digital storytelling. So we'll focus on story structure fundamentals, visual storytelling techniques, and audio and music integration. And then the third one that just seems to ever be growing so much is social media content creation. And then we will conclude. We will ask any questions. We'll wrap it up. We'll be done. We done. Okay. So, core photography. What is photography? Is it taking pictures of cool stuff? I mean, yes, but it's also capturing moments that actually tell a story about the subject that you choose to capture. This is not the official definition of photography, but this is how I think about photography. It's literally you're capturing moments that tell a story about whatever subject you choose to capture. So, question, how many of you shoot on auto? Of course, I know a lot of people that still shoot on auto, still use their camera on auto, and you're actually not getting the best out of your camera on auto for video and photos because auto, the camera does everything for you. So, yeah. And a lot of people use auto because they don't know what this is. And it's the exposure triangle. The exposure triangle is basically 3 key settings in your camera, in any camera that you use, that control aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Those three things create the exposure triangle. So aperture, it's also referred to as f-stop. So like on a lens, you would see f 2.8. Some lenses, you'd see t 2.8, whatever it is. But overall, most of the lenses you see are going to have t. Most of the lenses you see are going to have f 2.8 or f 1.2 or f whatever. And yeah, that controls the depth of field. It's basically the part of the lens that controls how much light actually enters the lens. And the lower the f-stop, the more light you're letting in. The higher the f-stop, the less you're letting in. A good way that I think about it is I think about the pupil of the eye. It's like when you get your pupils dilated, they want you to wear sunglasses because your eyes are letting in a lot of light. When your eyes are just regular, like when you're just waking up normally, your pupil's not as dilated. It's very small, so it's not letting in a whole bunch of light. It's letting in the perfect amount so you can actually just see. So yeah, so just remember, like f-stop works in lower to higher numbers. So the lower the number, the more you're letting in. The higher the number, the less you're letting in. So yeah, that's where it can get pretty confusing, but that's pretty much how it works. Next is shutter speed. So shutter speed controls the motion blur. The setting is the setting's pretty simple. It's the higher the number, the cleaner the motion. The lower the number, the more motion blur you'll see. So that's pretty much the easiest way to just explain it. And the last one is ISO. And ISO is really simple as well. It just controls how sensitive your camera is to light. The numbers range from 100 all the way up to 128,000. Some go higher. My camera personally goes up to 128, so I'm like, hey. And it looks pretty crazy when you get up to there because the higher your ISO number is, the more grainy your photo is going to be because now you're making it sensitive to all types of light and every little speck of light that's coming into your camera. So yeah, those are the three settings. They create your exposure triangle, and balancing these three settings is what is going to give you the best image in both video and photo. So good aperture example is f16. Most of everything is going to be in focus. It's letting in a little less light so it can see further down. And in f2.8, you have a very shallow depth of field. So you can basically only see the little purple flower. But in f16, you have a wider depth of field. So you can see all the water in the background. You can see the trees in the background. They're very clear. They're very easy to see. But with a shallow depth of field, you can still see everything in the background, but it's not in focus. It's only the subject that's right in front of the lens that's pretty much in focus. And shutter speed example, 1/30 shutter speed with a waterfall. I use the waterfall because waterfalls have like a lot of motion, so it's easier to kind of tell what it is. With like a 1/30 shutter speed, you can see all the water running a little clearer. You can see everything running down. But in a 1/10 shutter speed, the water looks almost like it's just kind of all together. Like it just looks a little more smooth over it, just because you see a lot more of the motion blur of the water actually running. So it looks a little more dreamy. So you can play with shutter speed in different parts of taking pictures. In video, not necessarily so much because you're going to ruin your video. You really want to keep shutter speed at whatever your shutter speed is, you want it to be 2 times your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames, you want to be 1/50 shutter speed. But again, that's a whole nother lesson. But in photos specifically, if you play with your shutter speed, you play with your motion blur, and you can make your pictures look a little more dreamy, a little more flowy in motion. It's however you want to make it. But yeah, that's shutter speed basically controls that. Now, when it comes to ISO, this is what I meant by grainy. So on the right side, you see very noisy and grainy. Just you'll also hear it referred to as noise. So if you ever see noise or grainy, just know they're the same thing. But on the right side, you see a picture that's ISO 6400. It's very grainy. It's very noisy. You can see all the little specks of light. That's what happens when you shoot at a high ISO. When you shoot at a low ISO, like 100, everything is very clean. You can still see everything. You can still see all the sun and the light. And yeah, it's just a cleaner picture. So this applies to video as well, because it's when you shoot a low ISO, it's going to be pretty clean, but it's also not as sensitive to light. So sometimes you do have to turn it up. A good rule of thumb for me is I try to never go over 800, because when you start getting into the 1000s, that's when things start to look a little weird. Sometimes you got to go to 1000, 1200. It kind of just depends, but I try to stay no higher than ISO 800, because that's just where the best quality is going to come from. So next thing is focus. There's many types of focus, and there's all kinds of different settings on all kinds of different cameras, but there's really only two that you really need to focus on, no pun intended, but and it's autofocus and manual focus. Manual focus is exactly what it sounds like. You control the focus manually. Autofocus is also exactly what it sounds like. The camera controls the focus automatically. And there's different kinds of autofocus, but there's really just single point and continuous. And there's just different variations of those kinds of autofocus. So what is single point autofocus? On your camera, you'll see AF-S or one shot autofocus. And it just means that the camera focuses on the subject once you press the half shutter button. Once you half press the shutter button down, the button you actually use to take the picture, that's when it locks onto that single point, and it'll focus until you either take the photo or you actually release the button. So it's good for just like you're taking a picture of like a stationary thing, you're taking a picture of a landscape, or you want precise control over what is in focus, but you don't want to use manual, but you still want precise control. Single point is just it's basically going to only focus on a singular thing and take a picture or video of that. Continuous autofocus, you'll see it as AF-C or AI servo. And what it does, the camera continuously adjusts the focus as long as you keep the shutter button half pressed, tracking moving subjects and keeping them sharp. So continuous autofocus just means it's going to focus. It's going to constantly try to find focus. So if your subject is moving, it's going to constantly try to focus on that no matter what's going on. And for a lot of cameras, it doesn't, as long as you have the setting actually set, you don't even really have to half press the button down. The camera's automatically going to try to focus on whatever it is that you're trying to take a picture of, and it's going to try to select the best thing. I use continuous autofocus a lot because a lot of the times in video, everybody's moving. Everything is moving, and you don't want to be manually trying to change it, and you also don't want to be trying to focus every few seconds. And with continuous autofocus, it's usually going to change the focus based on things pretty quickly without you having to do very much. But continuous autofocus is really good for, of course, moving subjects. You'll see it a lot in sports with little kids, with pets, and a lot of the times you'll see it with cars. So in commercials and car pictures that the car is zooming by, a lot of continuous autofocus. And then wildlife photography, of course, wildlife moves pretty quick. So you got cheetahs running, you got deer running everywhere. So things like that. And then street photography too, because you have cars moving, you have people walking. So focus will change drastically just even in a couple seconds. So yeah. And then, like I said, video recording, you're going to see it all the time. And then any situation that your subject's distance from the camera is actually changing. So if somebody's walking away, somebody's walking towards, somebody's going past, it's like, yeah, whenever your subject is moving, continuous autofocus is going to do the best in any of those situations. And this is just kind of a continuation of that. It's like the camera constantly analyzes the scene, adjusts its focus in real time, predicting where your subject will be when you actually take the photo. It's just going to continuously analyze the scene the entire time. Just kind of an elaboration on that. But the next thing we're going to do is composition rules and techniques. So in composition, there's really four main things, and there's four main aspects, and it's the rule of thirds, leading lines, framing in negative space, and then there's lighting. So the rule of thirds, it's a composition guideline. It really just divides your picture into three different spots, and it divides your picture into three different spots using vertical and horizontal lines. But there's specific parts in those lines that your subject is going to be the most noticeable, and it'll balance your picture the most, essentially. And those points are called power points, and it's usually on the line that's on the vertical line and the horizontal line that's on the left or the right side. So you never really want to have somebody directly in the middle of those lines. Now, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, and sometimes pictures look good when things are dead in the center of those lines, but most of the time when you place things on the left or the right side of the photo, right on those lines, those are the points where it's going to be the most interesting picture, to say the least. This is a good example. So we have this guy standing on the left. You have a lot of foreground, a lot of negative space. On the side of him, the picture looks more balanced because now you see him, you see what he's looking at, you see a little bit of the foreground of like where he's standing. So you get the picture is much more full. It's much more balanced. This is actually one of my pictures. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best, but it's a good example. This one actually went in the Denver Post. We have the focus was Kuvo Jazz, right? So I put the K right on that line to emphasize and have everyone's eyes go directly to the Kuvo Jazz, because the article that I was taking the picture for was about Kuvo Jazz being on air. So when I was taking the picture, this is how I actually set up my camera to have this view so I can take that picture and get the desired results. So your eyes, when you first look at the picture, your eyes are typically going to go over to the Kuvo Jazz first, and then you look at the rest of the picture. But you also see one of our hosts, Kim Berry. She's in there, and you can see where she's looking. You see the entirety of her office space, and it kind of just pulls you in to see like, wow, here we are at the radio station, and now I want to read this article about it. It just adds to the story that is already being told. So next thing is leading lines. What are leading lines? Leading lines are visual elements in your photo that guide the viewer's eye through the image, typically towards your main subject or a focal point, but think of them as invisible arrows that create a visual journey. So leading lines are just, they really help your pictures a lot, and a lot of pictures you see have leading lines, and sometimes people just do it on accident, but other times, especially in like architecture pictures and pictures of libraries and houses, like leading lines are very prominent in those kind of photos. So I got a couple examples. This top one is a staircase, but those leading lines lead you right into the middle of the photo, but they also send your eyes down the stairs, down your stair. Like It sends your eyes all throughout the photos just because you see the lines and it captures your eyes. Now, the one on the bottom left, it's train tracks. I mean, it's the simplest one you can kind of take, but it leads you down this long path of like what is at the other end of those trees, and it just kind of shows that like that picture has so much dimension and there's so much going on. And then another one is in the bottom right in the subway. It's like you're going down a hall. It's the leading lines are the bottom and the top lines that actually lead you down to where the two men are standing. And yeah, you see it a lot just in architecture. Like there's leading lines everywhere, even when you're walking around. You don't even necessarily have to be taking a picture, but leading lines actually make things interesting just to look at in general. So why do these work so well? Again, it's natural eye movement. Our brains are wired to follow lines and patterns. Like when we see certain patterns, when we see certain lines, it's like our eyes are automatically drawn to it. Like it's just, we're just wired that way. We're just made that way. It creates depth, kind of like the train tracks. It creates depth. You can see. It makes this 2D photo feel three-dimensional. It makes it feel like there's so much more. It makes you feel like you can really put your hand in the photo and reach, and there's still more to touch. And then storytelling, it can suggest a journey, it can suggest progress, it can suggest direction, because now when you're watching the video, when you're watching a movie and you see they look down this long hallway, you can see, like, you feel like, dang, this person's got a long way to go. Or like, dang, this hallway is scary. Like if you're in a horror movie, a lot of the times they shoot down a long hallway and somebody's standing at the end of the hallway. And it's like, dang, this person is trapped. This person is like, the only way they can go is towards that. Or like that is going to come towards them. It creates another aspect of the story that without having to physically say it, you can show someone and they feel something immediately. And of course, focus control. Leading lines, they allow you to control the focus and direct attention exactly where you want it to be. So if you want attention to be on the train tracks, if you want attention to be on the stairs, if you want attention to be on your subject that's at the end of the hallway, you can use lines to point towards it and the focus to blur out everything else and focus on what it is you want your audience to see. And a couple of shooting tips that I included were get low. Shooting from a lower angle, it often makes things more dramatic. And use wide angles. Wide angle lenses exaggerate perspective and make leading lines much more prominent. So like wide angles make things, it's because they capture so much in the view, you can use a lot more leading lines to point exactly where you're trying to go or show that direction in your story. Another one is look for converging lines. So multiple lines pointing to the same spot. Basically, they create a lot more impact without you having to do very much, because it's already set up for you. And then break the rules. I'm one that breaks the rules a lot, because sometimes leading lines can exit your frame. Leading lines can go somewhere else, and that just creates mystery. It creates tension. It creates thoughts in your viewer's mind. It allows whoever's viewing it to have their own story that they're already making up as they're listening to your story. So it allows them to be even more in depth with your story without you even having to do anything. They're already creating things in their own mind to help them come up with their story while they're wondering what's going on, while they're wondering what you're going to tell them next. So next thing we're going to talk about framing. What is framing? Framing uses the elements in your scene to create what is a frame, and frame around your subject, drawing attention, and adding depth. So we use framing to do exactly what it sounds like. build a frame inside the frame of your camera already. So natural frames, architecture. It's like architecture is always going to be the easiest way to explain things in photography because, I mean, it's just easy. Your architecture, you can use doorways, windows, arches, bridges. Nature, you can use tree branches, rock formations, caves. In urban environments, you can use mirrors, reflections in mirrors. You can use gaps between buildings. I mean, the list goes on. And then creatively, like you can make shapes with your hands. You can look through objects, like whatever you can really think of. You can do whatever and just create a frame within a frame. Whatever you think can make a frame, try it. You never know. These are a couple examples though. So top left, somebody used a fence to create a frame around the city. Bottom right, you have two doorways. Like someone used the doorway to frame the outside. Someone used the doorway to frame their person. And then in the bottom left, you have someone using the actual nature, the trees that were already hanging near the water to frame what either looks like a church. But anyways, I thought the picture was cool because I was like, wow, this is really nice. And then top right, have using train tracks and the walls and the arch around the train to frame their picture, create a frame inside a frame. The next thing we're going to look at is negative space. So negative space is basically, it's just the empty space that's in the photo. It's not really wasted. It's just, it adds to the photo. So kind of like how that picture that we saw of that guy standing, and he's standing on the left side and we see all this space on the right. That's not wasted space. That's negative space where there's no subject there. It just adds to the story of where the subject is at. But we got some more examples coming up. But first, why does negative space work? It enhances your subject because it isolates your subject. It gives breathing room to the image so it doesn't feel like, because you can look at a picture and feel like, dang, like there is no space here. It gives that space to the photo. And it conveys emotion, like lots of space. You can be very alone. You can also be free, and you can also be thinking about something. There's plenty of emotions. I just included the three that came to mind because lots of space can be, I went for a hike and I'm standing near this water. I have this beautiful view and I'm free from the light pollution and the pollution of the city. Like you can tell any kind of different story with those kind of shots, and it works in both photos and videos. But yeah, and then it improves readability, especially for like text overlays and social media. A lot of interviews that I shoot, actually, I use it a lot there, is when we frame them on one side of the rule of thirds. And that makes it easier for us to put the subject's name, what they do, right next to them as they're talking, and then it disappears, and it doesn't take away from the shot already. So that's a very good way of how we do things. But these are really two good examples of negative space that I found and I really liked. The one on the right, you see her on the right side with her dog, and it's a beautiful moment. Like you have all this negative space, and it just shows how beautiful of a space it's in. Same thing on the left. You're on this beautiful boardwalk. You can come up with your own story. You can come up with your own feelings on both of these pictures, because how I look at it will be completely different than how someone else looks at it. We may have the same, we may have some similarities, but how you look at it, it's going to be completely different based off of how you feel when you look at it. So the next thing is lighting. These aren't very good examples of golden hour and light and all those things because they're different times of day, and one's in black and white and one's not. But we're going to talk about golden hour. Golden hour is the magic hour. When is it? It's 1 hour before the sunrise, 1 hour before the sunset. And why is it called golden? Because the sun's low, it creates soft light, and the light is golden, and it's very soft. it's not super harsh. And then the scientific part is light travels through more atmosphere, filtering out harsh blue tones. That's the scientific part. For me, it's just the light is very soft, it's warm, and it's even. So you can get a much more dreamy look when you take photos, when you take videos. But it's for such a limited time that you got to be ready. Like if you're planning on shooting the golden hour, you need to be ready before golden hour starts because it'll be over before you realize. So some characteristics of golden hours. You got soft shadows. The shadows are gentle, they're flattering, and they add dimension without being so harsh. The color temperature is warm. It can make things feel romantic. It can make them feel cozy. It can make them feel nostalgic. But no matter what it is, it's always a positive feeling that comes with being in golden hour. At least for me. I don't know how it is for everyone else, but for me, like when I take videos and I take pictures during the golden hour, it's like when I watch them back or I edit them, it always has like a comfortable feeling that comes with it. And then, of course, like I said before, the exposure, it's even. So there's less contrast between the highlights and the shadows. It's just like your highlights aren't super strong, and your shadows aren't super strong too. They're very close together. So it just makes things easier. Makes things easier on the eyes. And then, of course, you got directional light. It makes beautiful rim lighting and side lighting. We won't go into too much detail on that, but it's just the lighting is very directional. It comes from a singular source rather than it like spreading so widely over places. And it's very smooth across everything. And of course, it's forgiving. Makes almost everyone and everything look good. So golden hour is really perfect for portraits. It's good for landscapes. It's good for weddings. It's really, really good for weddings. And then social media content, I mean, all content creators know about the golden hour. At least the ones that I know. If you don't know about it, you got to learn about it. But that's why you're here. And then really anytime you want that dreamy but professional look, golden hour, can't go wrong. I don't know how many people you're going to get that's going to get up an hour before the sun rises. But before it sets, you'll be good. But this is a really good example of a wedding picture that was taken during golden hour. It's like you have all this negative space. I chose this one because it has a lot of negative space, has good contrast, and I mean, even has leading lines. But yeah, it looks dreamy. I'm sure the lovely couple was very happy when they saw this picture. I mean, I could have did a little different on the editing, but hey, it's a beautiful picture. Now, let's talk about harsh midday light. I don't like shooting harsh midday light because the light, first of all, it varies by the season. It varies by where you're at. And it's just, there's too many variables because it can be moving. It can be at this angle one at 1 second, and then next it's over here, and then you got cloud cover. It's just like, it's very hard to shoot outside and keep everything even because one picture will look one way and the other one will look completely different. There's too many different things going on. And then this is also the time where the sun is overhead, and this is really the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. But like I said, it varies on where you're at, what season it is, all those different things. But good characteristics of it is the shadows are hard. They're very deep. The shadows form underneath the eyes, and it's the chin, the nose. There's a lot of shadows just on the face in general, especially if they wear glasses or if they wear a hat. It makes things even more uneven. It's a lot. In the high contrast, you have really high highlights, really bright highlights, and then really dark shadows. And there's really just no in between. It's few and far. Like it's a really strong difference in all of them. And then of course you get that cool neutral color temperature, and it just looks like the words I could find were clinical or sterile, but it just looks just not. It doesn't look very good. At least not to me. It just looks very. It just looks harsh. It looks like it doesn't have any like feeling to it. Um, and then top down lighting, like it makes the raccoon eyes, and it's unflattering facial shadows. Like I said earlier, it's just you get the raccoon eyes, and it looks like all around your eyes is just dark. It makes it look much darker than it actually is. And then you just have shadows all over your face, even depending on where you're standing. There's a building nearby, you got shadows cutting you here, but also like the sun's on your legs, and just the lighting's too uneven. And then challenging exposure also, because your camera's struggling to find a good exposure because that light is so harsh. It's super bright, but it's also super dark. And yeah, it's harder on your camera, and especially if it's in the summertime, it's hot too, so your camera's super hot. And yeah, it's not a good feeling. This is a really good example too. It's just like this is a shot in harsh midday light, and it's not exactly like, it's not a bad picture. It's just the light is very harsh. You have either really dark shadows, especially on the face, and you have really bright highlights. So she's kind of blown out in some areas of her face, but in other areas she has a lot of shadow. Like on the right side of her face, she has a lot of light, and on the left side of her face, she has a lot of shadows. And then of course you got like the shadow on her neck. It's not nice. Not nice. It's very hard to shoot in this type of light. But there is a way to shoot in it. We can probably talk about that in another class, but it's very difficult to shoot in this kind of light naturally, I'll say. But that's pretty much the end of that part. So we're going to jump into digital storytelling. This is the part where we talk about how you tell your story with the pictures and the videos that you're taking. So, visual storytelling techniques. We talked about this a little bit previously in our editing class. And yeah, so we're going to reiterate it here, but we're not going to go over all the specific shots like how we did last time, because if you do want to see the types of shots that you can use, then of course check out that last class of the video production intensive, and we go a little bit deeper into it. But we use different shots for emotional impact. So we use the close-up for intimacy, we use wide shots for context and establishment, medium for dialogue. Now, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Use your best judgment. What looks best for you, what looks best for the story you're telling, but that's just a good rule of thumb. Now, pacing and rhythm, this is another thing we chatted about during our editing class, but another thing we'll reiterate is fast cuts for energy. These are action sequences. These are when the car's driving fast. These are when, the Transformers chasing the human. It's anything that's very actiony, anything that's very like you want to get the energy rolling up. Same thing with horror movies, all those different things. And then slow pacing for emotion. And you can say documentary style, but it can just be a sad part of a movie. It can be a sad video. It can be a sad part of the video. It's just anything to show emotions more deeply. That's when you usually use slower cuts. Like, and you can even be someone talking about a subject that's very important to them. That's when you use the slower cuts. Like, you don't want to cut as if you're editing an action sequence when someone's talking about how they survived a car accident or something. Like, you don't want to do that. But again, that part's not supposed to be in there. The audience may forgive mediocre visuals, but poor audio. But that's another thing. We'll talk about music in a second. Next thing is the color. Like how your video looks, how your story looks. The color is going to tell a lot. So colors trigger emotional and psychological responses that are both biological, how our brains process wavelengths of life, wavelengths of light, and cultural learned associations. So filmmakers, photographers, and content creators use this guide for audience emotions, use this to guide audience emotions and without them even realizing it. So how we see colors, how we view what's going on in a video, those things are intentionally used by filmmakers, photographers, everyone to bring out certain emotions, to relate to you in certain ways that you don't consciously think about, but through your lifetime and just how your brain is actually wired, you're going to connect with that in a certain way. So how do those things work? Warm versus cool tones in this an emotional spectrum. So warm tones, they're your reds, they're your oranges, they're your yellows. They create energy and excitement. It increases your heart rate and attention. It also makes you hungry, especially like the reds. Red is a color that's used to make you feel hungry or make you want something. Comfort and intimacy. It always feels cozy. It always feels familiar. It always feels safe. This is another reason why golden hour works really well, because it's a lot of reds, oranges, and yellows. Passion, intensity. I mean, the color of passion is literally red. But it makes romantic or aggressive depending on the context. Like people's eyes turn red when they're angry in most cartoons, or their face turns red. So it can be aggressive, just depending on context. It can be romantic, it can be aggressive, it can be anywhere in between that. But optimism and happiness, it's also associated with sunshine and fire. So I mean, golden hour, beautiful sunshine. End of the day, it's nice. It's red, it's orange, it's yellow. It's very cozy, those kind of things. And then urgency too. It grabs your attention and creates a sense of immediacy. So it grabs your attention really quickly. So yeah. Storytelling applications too is, we won't go too deep into this, but it's romance scenes, warm candlelight, sunset, action sequence, orange, explosions, red emergency lights, happy memories, golden hour flashbacks, warm family scenes, comfort zones, cozy houses, cafes, intimate conversations, conflict and tension, red lighting for danger, anger, or passion. So some examples of that are I include those, just Mad Max, Fury Road. The desert scenes use orange and yellow to show harsh, intense survival. Her in 2013 had warm tones throughout to create intimacy and emotional connection. And then the Instagram lifestyle content is like, there's a lot of golden hour photos that feel aspirational and happy. So a lot of our content creators, they use golden hour to create a certain type of feeling, because even they connect to it in a certain way. So they know their audience will connect to it in a certain way. Cool tones. These are your blues, your greens, your purples, your cooler colors. So these are calm. These make calm and tranquil pictures and psychological effects. They create sense of isolation and sadness. They also can be futuristic and technological, kind of like iRobot. That movie is very futuristic, but you see a lot of blues, you see a lot of cool tones in that movie because those different things. But you also see some warm tones in there when things get intense, things get passionate, like they turn red. So yeah. But cool tones make mystery and unknown things. It makes suspense and uncertainty. So a lot of horror movies use really cool tones because things get dark. It's very unknown. It's very otherworldly. And then professionalism. So like trustworthy, reliable, and corporate stuff. Like a lot of corporations and different things, like a lot of corporate entities and corporations, they utilize cooler tones to show like that futuristic look, but also still remain professional and very even and things like that. So yeah. And the application for cool tones in storytelling is, you want to use sad. You can use it for sad and emotional scenes. You can use it in sci-fi and tech. You can use it in night scenes. You use it in medical and corporate scenes, and of course, mystery, thriller, horror, those kind of things too. So some real world examples would be like Blade Runner 2049. There's a lot of cool blues in there. It makes it look futuristic, makes it look dystopian. The Matrix, green tint in a digital world versus a real world, it takes you into a different world completely. And then LinkedIn content is like you'll see a lot of cool tone, professional blues just to convey trustworthy because there's a lot of business people on LinkedIn. Even the actual LinkedIn app is blue. So it shows a different level of professionalism and different level of like trustworthiness in the sense of where you're at. Color pro tips. When using color, just start with emotion. What do you want your viewer to feel? And then choose the colors from there. Study references. Analyze your films. Analyze photos. Analyze art that has that mood specifically so you can kind of match to that. Subtle is very powerful. I've mentioned that before. Subtlety is actually a big key because small shifts in color, small shifts in situations, small shifts in scenes can be significantly more effective than dramatic changes because they're easier to follow for your audience. And then test on different screens. Like colors look different on different screens. Like my MacBook is no different. Like colors are very prominent on my MacBook, but I'll send it to somebody or I'll watch it on the TV and it's not as, those colors aren't as prominent in what I'm trying to put out. So it's like something could be, or the colors are way more prominent than they look on my MacBook. Like it'll look very plain and very drab, and then I'll put it on a different screen. I'm like, whoa, these colors pop. So just test on different screens before you put it out because it may look different on your phone, it may look different on your TV, whatever it is you're doing. Always test on a different screen. And consider accessibility. This doesn't really apply to everybody. It kind of depends on what it is you're specifically doing, like what kind of photography, videography, and those things that you're doing. But ensure your color choices don't exclude colorblind viewers because some people can't even see certain colors. But again, that doesn't apply to everybody. It's not always going to apply to everybody either. So that kind of just depends on what you're specifically doing. But yeah, it's a good thing to think about. And then music, audio. We talked about this in our editing class too. But what we're going to talk about today is ambient sound and music. Ambient sound, this is your natural sound. This is and I've never heard this word until I started putting this class together, but it's diegetic sound. And it's just the real world audio. It's like the chatter at the coffee shop. It's the cars driving by when you're walking on the street. It's just that natural sound you hear whenever you're in a certain area or situation. Even the sound of like humming when the room is silent. And then of course music, non-diegetic, and it's not part of the scene itself. It's music that you put in your composition. So the types of music, when you're trying to look those things up, you'll see like a score or an instrumental. This is just the original composition for a specific effect. And like sometimes you'll see this is a score, or sometimes you'll see this is instrumental. It's just so you kind of know that they're the same thing. And then licensed songs, these are existing tracks that you can get from like a Universal Music Group, from an Envato, anywhere you can really download music, Artlist, anywhere you can really download music. And then sound design music is a hybrid of ambient sound and musical elements. So it's just this is also music that you would download from an Envato, an Artlist, a Splice, whatever it is you would download those kind of pieces of content from. That's the end of that part. So social media content creation, again, we won't go into a deep dive because we're just talking about the basics. So I'm going to focus on content pillars. And content pillars, they're literally 3 to 5 core themes that define what you post about. These themes are going to control These themes are going to ensure that like you have variety in the items you're posting. So you're not just, oh, I'm just going to post all these cool pictures and all these cool videos I got. Like you really want to have like a pillar of things that you post. And we're going to talk about our core themes. First thing, educational content. Now, these percentages, I gave them to you for just a sense of like how much you can do it. I only use 4 core pillars, and yeah, first one is educational content. The purpose is to establish expertise and provide value. So, educational content is exactly what we're doing now. I'm teaching about a specific topic. You can teach people about different topics. You can do how to's, you can do step by steps, you can do tips and tricks, whatever it is that can educate your audience. People love that. That's why it works, because people want to learn things and people want to learn things from people. So they follow those accounts because they feel like what those people are teaching are valuable. And I mean, educational content, especially when it's good educational content and you really know what you're talking about, people start to trust what it is you do, and they start to trust you as a creator too. So that's how you build your trust, and it also makes you like it shows how much higher you are in the field, builds authority in there, but it just shows how much knowledge you've built over the years of what you're doing. The next one is entertaining content. I mean, everybody loves to be entertained. Like, these are memes, these are the funny videos, these are the trends, these are the challenges, these are the polls. It's pop culture. I mean, everybody wants to be entertained. That's why it works. People want to engage with things that are entertaining. People share things that are entertaining. People share things that are funny. They talk about things that are funny. They laugh at them. They laugh with multiple people. It makes you more memorable because people come back and like, I was really entertained. People want to come back to things that they really like. It creates positive reinforcement for the creator that you are. And then inspiring content. I mean, we use it to motivate. We use it to uplift. People love to be motivated. People love to feel uplifted. Like, you can talk about your success stories. You can use motivational quotes. You can do before and afters, like a lot of gym people do before and afters. A lot of content creators show, before I lived here and now I live here. Like, anything that is like before and after, you can show those transformations because people are actually very much inspired by those things. And then your personal growth stories. Like, I know a friend of mine, their content creation journey early on, and as they learn to create content, they learn more about themselves and they share that story on their social media, and that has brought a lot of people to follow them just because they loved their journey in learning more about themselves. So yeah, and then of course community win celebrations. I'm a big follower of Earn Your Leisure. Like, when I hear Earn Your Leisure university students have made successful call options or have invested in stocks and now they're starting to make money too. It's like, that inspires me to want to invest in stocks. That inspires me to want to invest in my knowledge of learning about these companies and different things like that. And that inspires me to want to, like, InvestFest is coming up. They say 30,000 people are coming. And last year they said, yeah, we had 20,000. Now we're aiming for 30. And it's like, I want to be part of that 30,000 this year. So those things, like, that's why it works. People want to be inspired. It drives them to do something. It drives them to take action, and it forms an emotional connection without you necessarily having to physically connect with that person, but you guys connect emotionally, vicariously through what you're doing. And then the fourth one is behind the scenes. I mean, as a filmmaker, as a content creator, and as a photographer, videographer, like, behind the scenes content is very key, because a lot of people don't know what it is that you do just in general. So when they get to see behind the scenes, I guess a good example would be Beyonce. Like Beyonce's tours are huge. I just went to one of her. I went to her Cowboy Carter tour in Atlanta, and in her Renaissance tour, she released a whole documentary of how she put that show together and all the work that went into it. And just watching that, I was not. I won't say I wasn't a Beyonce fan, but I didn't pay attention to her as much. But when I heard about how much she does and how much she puts into her shows and how much effort she personally puts into it, it made me even more interested. And that caused me to actually go get a ticket and go see your show. And I was extremely impressed. I was even more impressed than before. But yeah, behind the scenes content is just it's going to show what it is you really do. It's going to show like you as a person when you're not in front of the camera necessarily. It's going to show the work that goes into the things that you're creating, the things that you're doing. But yeah, that's why it works. It inspires people. It drives them to want to follow you, and it shows how authentic you are as a person. Yeah, that's a duplicate slide. Sorry. And then the next thing we'll talk about shortly is visual brand consistency. So through all those different pillars, you want to make sure things are consistent. You want to make sure your colors are consistent. You want to make sure your pictures are consistent. Like it just visual consistency makes content easily recognizable. They know who you are based off of those colors. So color schemes, you got primary brand colors. You really only want to use 2 to 3. I mean, you can do what you want, but you really only want to use 2 to 3. Your main brand is 60. Your main color, 60%. Your second color is like 30%, and then the accent color you can use for 10%. That's just a good balance. I found that works. That's a good balance that a lot of my design friends, they tell me works. And yeah, it's a lot of how I notice in certain things. So, and then the color psychology behind that is like tech brands, they often use blues for trust and innovation. Wellness brands, they use greens and earth tones. So to show like it's more natural, they show it's calming. So like Prosper Wellness, they use a lot of greens. They use a lot of like neutral browns to show that their products are completely organic. They even use whites too. But creative agencies, they use like bold, varied palettes. So to show that they're very creative, to show there's a lot of energy behind them. So different things like that. And then luxury brands, they always use black, white, or gold. You'll always notice those colors are in there because they're simple, they're sophisticated, but they always show like a different level of premium in them. So how do you practically apply it? Your backgrounds, consistent color or tone, text overlays, same color, same color family. So you want it to be contrasty, but you want to be able to read it. Of course, you want to be able to read it on the background, but that's kind of how you use it. And then graphics and icons, same colors, like your brand color palette, your 2 to 3 colors. You want to make sure that those are always the same thing. And then borders and frames, consistent accent colors. So the same, whatever accent colors you choose, make sure you just use them consistently across all of them. And then fonts, typography. Again, we won't go over this in too much detail, but you have a primary, a secondary, and an accent font. Your primary font is the big important text. Your secondary font is the body of text. It's what's written. Your accent is like special occasions or quotes, whatever it is. Those are decorative stuff. Your brand personality through your fonts, though, like modern and tech companies, they use clean sans serifs fonts, the Helvetica, the Montserrats. Creative places use custom fonts, and then professional and corporate people, they use classic serifs or clean sans serifs as well. And then playful and youth ones, they use rounded, more friendly fonts. Good rules of consistency is you want to have the same fonts across all your platforms, consistent sizing and hierarchy, and then proper spacing and alignment. and of course, readable contrast on the backgrounds. Okay, so last thing is engagement and community building. This is what I really wanted to get to. A lot of people ask, how do you build community? It's a lot less difficult than you think. The only thing that you really need to do is have good messaging and good strategy. You can have question prompts. So you can ask your community questions. You can reach out to them. You can boost you can boost your following through that way by asking people questions that they engage people. They get a wider distribution, and more people want to share the answers to those questions because they just want to know. And then another thing is you can use open-ended questions. You can use you want to use open-ended questions because it allows for more conversation and you get more detailed responses through those conversations. That's pretty much it. And I included a couple examples, but those are just examples that you can use. But now effective questions, other questions you can ask are either or questions. They're easy to answer. A lot of people participate in those. They're just very easy to create a friendly debate. And then last one, fill in the blank questions. You can, my favorite app is my Fill the Most Creative Win. They fill in the blank just because they're just simple to engage with. Somebody can give a quick answer really quick and still want to talk about it, and they'll actually remember that too. And you just become more relatable when you do that too. And then this is actually the last one, sorry. Then experience-based questions. I mean, this is kind of straightforward. You can ask people about their experiences in whatever it is you're talking about. And then you have opinion-based questions. These spark discussions and show different perspectives. But you have your calls to action. So you can have engagement call to actions. A call to action drives your audience to directly take action. But you can have engagement ones, you can have educational ones, and you can have community building ones. I included a couple examples. These will all be in the resources, but these are just things that you can use to draw your audience into action. And that's the end. That's all I got for y'all. But do we have any questions?
Not online. I had a question for you.
Yeah.
In the social media context, it seems like the standard now is to shoot vertical, cell phone-like frames versus the horizontal, wider.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Benefits, drawbacks from.
Okay. Well, the question was, social media now is a lot of vertical content versus horizontal content, and it was kind of my take on it. Well, when it comes to social media content, I see a variation of both. So I see people that still use horizontal video. They just use it creatively. They'll have you turn your phone to the side and it'll take up the size of a reel, but their phone is horizontal. And that's a good creative way to use it. But when it comes to making it, I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think it's just kind of a creative choice thing because there's a lot of stories that can be told vertically. There's a lot of things that you can use vertical content for. And there's even ways you can resize your videos to show only certain parts of it to point people to your longer horizontal video. And then there's also times that I see that people just post the horizontal video and it still does extremely well. I think a lot of people get tied up in the weeds of this needs to be vertical, this needs to be horizontal, and I need to do this way. It's make content for your specific audience and share it how you want to share it, and then choose what does best. So if you do a lot of short films, then maybe it's easier, maybe it's not easier, but maybe it's more digestible for your audience to have a vertical reel of a scene from the short film that they can use, that points them to your YouTube channel to show the horizontal video. Or maybe you have 1 minute vertical reels that, that are just stories in themselves, and that shows how great of a creator you are, that lands you some client work or different things like that. I think it's just whatever audience you have, post what works best for you first, and then just think about what is doing the best. Are your reels doing the best vertically? Then, yeah, maybe we make more of those, or we find more creative ways to utilize that. But if your horizontal ones are doing fine, I would say keep using those, because I've seen success in both. I know that was a kind of long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
It was a wide question, so I think you did pretty good.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all I got.
Going back to like the rule of thirds and the way that like the person in the picture is orientated towards the negative space. Is there a good like practice when taking a picture with the person? Like, should the person be facing the negative space?
Oh, okay. So the question was, with negative space in the rule of thirds, should the subject be placed a certain way, right? That was the question. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the rule of thirds, you don't necessarily they don't have to be facing a certain way. They don't have to be placed a certain way. It's just your subject is going to be most interesting, and your eyes are going to go towards that the most when they're placed on that line. They don't necessarily have to be looking a certain way, but also think about the context of the picture. So like if someone's looking left, you probably don't want to put them on the left side of the rule of thirds, because you don't give them any room to like look at what they're looking at. But also if the person is just, standing looking off into the sunset, it doesn't really matter if you put them on the right or the left. It's just whichever side looks the most captivating, that gives that negative space for you. So, yeah. I think that's it.
And we do have one. Let's see. From a creative perspective, why is storytelling so important in juncture with proper editing?
Okay. So why is I'm sorry, what was the question one more time?
Why is storytelling so important in juncture with proper editing?
Why is storytelling so important in juncture with proper editing? Because if like your story is supposed to be, like your storytelling is important because you don't want to tell a certain kind of story that doesn't match the pacing of the edit. It's like you don't want to tell a heartfelt story quickly. You don't want to tell an action-packed story slowly. So when you have, based on whatever story you're trying to tell, your editing is going to match the tone and the pacing and the rhythm at which that story should be told, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And we have another one, just to follow up to the negative space. Is it possible to have too much negative space in a photo?
I personally don't think there's too much negative space, because there's only so much you can fit in a frame in general. But with negative space, it is wise to use it sparingly, of course. Like and use it based off of the context of what you're shooting. So if you're shooting a person standing in front of a mountain, maybe we don't want to have a whole lot of mountain and a little bit of person. We want to have a good balance of that. So, yeah, I don't think there's a such thing as too much negative space. I think there's just more context of the situation that you're taking the photo.
Do you have your PowerPoint available afterwards if people wanted to go back through?
Yes. So the PowerPoint that I had, it is available. I will make sure that DCM has it and they will put it on their resource page.
Thank you.
But if there aren't any more questions, I will see y'all later. That's all I got. Thanks for the claps. I appreciate y'all. Oh, thank you. Hey, that's why I record it, because I'm like, you can always go back.